What's up guys, it's Van and K7 from Canadian Ophidiophile coming to you on YouTube on our second installment of Advancing Snake Keeping. Merry Christmas, by the way. Moving right on. We're going to talk about understanding the snake. Why do we have to start with understanding the snake? Because that's where you have to start with this whole operation of getting deeper into your knowledge, right? So now the two things that I say always seem to get in the way of understanding anything is fear and ignorance. Now, ignorance is one of those things where you can, after you learn something and you understand it, it usually goes away. Fear doesn't work that way as much. You can know something and you can still have a fear about something. So we're going to get into that. We're going to start right off into we're going to start with the definition of fear first. What's the definition of fear? Fear is an emotional response to a situation that is deemed either someone or something that is threatening you, harming you, or is deemed dangerous by you, right? There's two stages to that, right? There's an emotional response to it, and there's an actual situation that's happening that causes that response from you. The response out of you is what fear is. So there's a difference there. You gotta understand that and separate that too, right? So now going right into it, with there's two aspects to fear: rational and irrational. Now, everyone knows about irrational fear. What irrational fear is basically a fear of something you don't have a control over. You don't know why you are still afraid of it. This happens in the category of what we face every day with what we do. Keeping snakes is our favorite word, ophidiophobia. If you guys haven't heard that word before, ophidiophobia literally means in Greek snake fear. Which is why ophidiophile is called ophidiophile. For those who've had issues pronouncing or understanding what that means. But that's what ophidiophobia is. And ophidiophobia, that's a very common fear, guys. That's it. It's 1/3 of human population. It's one of the most reported fears to this day. And you gotta understand that it's a very innate fear that we have all evolved to have based purely on dangerous snakes, of course, right? We have venomous snakes that can hurt us and giant snakes that can hurt us. So generally speaking, we stay clear of snakes. Most things. Monkeys have evolved to have special calls in the trees to identify particularly for snakes even. So the studies that show that even. So it's a very innate fear in any animal that could potentially be harmed by a snake in the history of our existence. So ophidiophobia is a very deep-rooted fear. Let's just put it that way, right? So, but how do we? That's the irrational part that maybe we can't seem to grasp. But it's not really, because we do have a reasoning behind it now, right? So if we say it comes from the understanding of that's a venomous snake and so on and so forth, now we have an understanding. So it's not really so much an irrational fear. Now we know how the animal can hurt us, right? We know that if we stand this far back, the animal's not going to hurt us. Yet we still can't bear the sight of it being in a building of, I'm just being flat out straight up here. We've heard it as keepers, right? With the fear that we've heard from the general public or people we've met and friends and families, where the extreme responses to which in all fairness is just an innate response that's built into us as a species. So there's the irrational part of it, but there's the rational part that crosses over here now. Now I want you guys to talk about the rational side of it, or think about the rational side of it, wherein you know something doesn't hurt you. For example, on a keeper's level, where we keep snakes, and I met keepers where they know a tiny little baby corn snake is not going to hurt them, but they still are worried to pick up this little baby snake because it's reared up in a coil. Like, I don't know what to do with it. Maybe it has a stuck shed and I don't want to deal with it because it's reared up. And so there's that. Why do we know that little thing can't hurt us, yet we're held back by this fear? There's more to come. I'll deal with that in more videos along the line, and we'll talk about that too, right? So that's the difference there between rational and irrational fear. Now, I want to talk about the other thing here. Now, I want to always give, as much as I want to say this is the scenarios and it's a negative scenario, we're always going to move to the positive side here. And what is my favorite thing, as much as we have enemies of knowledge being, understanding being fear and ignorance, we have what I call the hero of the day, confidence, right? I'm not just talking about just old Johnny Bravo running around or something like that. No, I'm talking about the confidence and I don't mean Johnny, damn it! You got me there. Talk about confidence, right? That's confidence. Like power, bro. Power, right there. But talking about confidence here, I'm talking about actually knowing the outcome of a situation, actually having confidence to control the outcome of a situation, not just bravado, not just false pretentiousness or just putting a front up, right? I'm talking about a confidence in being in control of a situation or an interaction. So, and most of that comes from the difference between fear and confidence. Really, I want to make the distinction there is fear is very, just like what we talked about ophidiophobia being, is very instinct based. Fear is very instinct based, whereas it's a reaction that before we realize what's happening, we're reacting to a situation already out of fear, right? Sometimes we even know what the situation is, and it maybe might not need to be harmful to us, yet we still keep that fear in us, right? It never goes away. So there's always that conflict in that situation, but why? Because it's an instinct that we can't seem to get away from, right? Now, but how do we dispel that instinct? How do we dispel this instinct that 1/3 of human beings actually have this fear of? I don't want to sound like a messiah that just comes on, but I don't know why I keep doing that. It's a thing. But confidence is my hero because it's the learned response to a situation, learned behavior to a situation wherein you understand the difference, where fear is overcome by the confidence in knowing, right? There's not knowing, ignorance, right? And all that is what keeps fear in there. Not knowing the outcome of the situation. Once you know the outcome of the situation, it should help you lean closer towards confidence. And this I'm talking about also you guys in your general keeping, right? I'm talking about, now I'll get into the other side of it now, flip it out over with the snakes here. I'm sorry to interject there or flip it right around, but there's a very important point I don't want to miss, where while we talk about our fear and how we relate to the snake, I want to flip it around to the snake and how the snake relates to it and us as on the fear level here. Wherein the fear of the snake being an instinctual response to a predator in its presence, versus a learned response wherein a snake learns not to fear us and we actually get to handle a tame snake where we can actually pass off to young kids or pick up with no issues at all, right? So on the flip side here, confidence in snakes. Now I'm not talking about emotional response and again, we're not talking about the Johnny Bravo. I'm talking about actual learned response to a situation, and I want to go a little deeper here with something that I've learned recently with my snakes, especially my hatchling snakes. When they're first born, and any keeper that actually, or breeders who actually bred baby snakes, know that you've always had a couple of individuals that don't necessarily follow the trend of how they're supposed to get established or start or have their first meal, right? How do you get, as a breeder, how do you get your snake to have its first meal? I found just over trial and error and just keying into my animals a little bit more and going a little deeper into understanding what they are, is once you've seen it, when a snake approaches, a baby approaches a prey item, I do tongue feeding. If you guys don't understand what tongue feeding means, it's using a pair of hemostats or tweezers and literally that, just holding it with the tongs and offering it to a snake. I just like that because it's just a better method for me. I know right there and then what the feeding response of the snake is. But anyways, going back into getting the snake to understand the difference between the fear level and the confidence level, it needs to actually have a meal, right? And you can see where the baby snake runs back. As soon as you as soon as you jerk back, right? And fear kicks back and the baby's gone. And you know, once you get a proper trigger a prey movement or something and the baby's coming back at you, and because that's a learned response, it kicks back into, right? So, and eventually you get that to the point of where I usually like hatchlings to be before they leave, is tongue feeding. So they get past that fear. So when they go into a new home, they have a better experience and they're not stressed out and so on and so forth. But that's an anecdote for you to, is that how you pronounce that? Anecdote?
No, you're right.
I've read it more than I've said it. It's one of those things. But, you know, and so there's that. You can see that in baby snakes too, where actually they have that level of knowing and not knowing, right? So keep that in mind in your own interactions with your animals too. So understand that snakes can fear you, but they can also learn not to fear you, right? So, and on that note, guys, I want to talk about something very important that's actually happening in our hobby right now. Something that anyone who believes in reptiles being a part of our keeping existence, not necessarily only be kept in the wild. Well, let's not put. Let's not reach the point that the wild's not necessarily safe for all the species that we're keeping reintroducing animals into the wild. So let's not go to that point here. But we got to talk about a situation that's happening in Ontario that could threaten the keeping of reptiles in Ontario and possibly the rest of Canada, wherein they're going to introduce a bill called Bill 136. Look it up. I'm going to leave links down below. And it basically involves what they're doing is where the SPCA used to be responsible in the governing of the legalities of what you can keep in the province or even municipalities. It was down to that. There was no big provincial regulation. Now all that has fallen down pieces. Now the government's taken over and saying we're going to have to look after this now, and we want to make sure they come up with a good plan and a right plan, listening to the right people in the right way, so there is no fear involved in the wrong way, no irrational fear, and we can go in with a good set of minds. So I beseech everyone that's watching this right now, if you can, please go down and sign the petition you can below and show your support in any way you can. There's links below you can do that with. Please do that and help us fight this unfair fight against the fear of something that we love. We can't forget our little homework section here. I want you guys to go back to your own animals until next week and pay attention to your interaction and see if your snake fears you. And find out how your snake fears you. Watch the responses while you're feeding them, while you're cleaning them. Watch if they're running away from you. Or not running, because snakes don't run, right? But watch if they're moving away from you. Are they curious? Are they coming up to you? And just take note of things like that. All right. And if you notice any differences, or if you notice anything cool, or you notice something at all, leave it in the comments below. Until then, Revenge of Snake Lord, Chapter 1.
Oh God, no! Help! They're coming to get me! Oh shit! No. Oh God, Jesus! Oh.
I have become king of the snake people.
Oh no! What have you done to us?
Sacrifice the children.
We rule them all.
Okay, no violence to elves though. Really, this is a
I know,
kids
I was
show.
like, that was
Really,
like-
What?
Just keep.
Merry Christmas!
Thanks for watching to the end, guys. If you haven't hit subscribe yet again, thanks for watching. Thanks for watching, guys. Hit subscribe if you haven't yet again. What do I have to keep saying yet again? Thanks for watching, guys. Hit subscribe if you haven't yet. Haven't yet.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, it was double. I had to double yet again. That was like a way. Okay.
Silly man.
Okay. Just stop and go from there.
But you just have to be like confident with it.